Thanks for watching Mac Be Buzzin'. Today in North Texas, it is just over 100 degrees, and it feels like close to 110, I believe, because of the humidity. The humidity has been particularly bad this year. But despite the temperature, it's time to pull honey. It's the most glorious time of year for a beekeeper. And so last weekend, I pulled some honey, got it to the extraction room. I tested some frames while I was still out and about to make sure it was in the right moisture threshold before bringing it home. But when I got to the extraction room, discovered that actually a pretty significant amount of it was actually not quite as dry as I would like it to be. Now, the standard rule is you need to get it below 18.5%. It's better if it's below 17.5%. Absolute ideal is probably in the neighborhood of 17. The honey that I had, the majority of it was right around 19.25%, which doesn't leave me incredibly comfortable that it wouldn't ferment in a bottle, depending on what the actual pollen spores in the honey are. So that left me with a situation where I need to actually dry down the honey. Now, if you're a commercial honey producer, you probably have a drying room set up, ready, handy for you to go. This is an atypical year for me. Typically, I'm harvesting in small batches. I'm not bringing in a whole lot at a time. And I've had a better than normal production this year because of some of the rain that we got through the spring. And so that leaves me in an interesting situation because I don't have a drying room. And since the ethos of this channel is creative problem solving, the challenge was, how do I essentially set up a drying room where I can control the temperature, I can control the evaporation of the honey to get it dried out quick enough that I don't have to worry about pests? The answer to that question is not my garage. In fact, it is this wonderful camper that I have right behind me. But this is actually my mobile honey lab at the moment. Got permission from the wife to actually set this up. It's a nice, confined, closed-off space. It's actually a hybrid camper, so it's got big bunk ends that drop out to expand the square footage, but I'm leaving those closed up so that we get nice insulation inside. But it's got plugs, it's got electricity, it's got running water, so I have a sink, both hot and cold, so it's a nice clean system. And so let me show you what I've got set up in here as the temporary drying room so we can try and deal with this problem. So I'm going to start first over on this side. So you can see there's the door we just came in through. The first dehumidifier that I have is right over here in the corner. It fits nicely on this ledge. Gives me a reading right here. I'll see if I can get it to focus. Right there on that top number a little bit. It's having a hard time. There we go. But you can see that it's actually telling me that the humidity level in this room right now is actually 32%. My target was 35. Our camper has this nice shelf set up right here. This was the little bit of honey that I had before I realized the humidity level was, that the moisture level was a problem. And so it only goes to about right here in the bucket. So I'm stirring regularly, and we're working to dehumidify that little bit to get it down as well, because it was just below 19%. And then over here, you can see my setup. So this is actually one of those guards you put in the back of a SUV to make sure your carpet doesn't get dirty. It's got a lip on it, which allows me to make sure that I don't have any drippage, because the wife wouldn't be thrilled with that. Those are actually my feeder shims, which I ran long ways on top of that to give myself essentially a ledge. And then any honey boxes that I bring in, I'm able to stack on top. It keeps them open at the bottom so that we get full ventilation. And then of course you can see up here, we just have some good old standard box fans that are running through to blow that moisture out. I tend to do small batch, so I know which specific hives each of these boxes came from, because I like to taste the differences between the different hives. I like to include that information for the people who buy my honey. I do direct sale to customers. I'm not a wholesaler in bulk to anyone. And then over here in the corner, I've got another dehumidifier, which you can see right here. The target, that's as low as this one goes, is targeting 45% humidity. The actual ceiling AC unit, which is on, I'm not running it super hot because super cold, because I do want it to be able to effectively absorb more moisture into the air, and hot air or warmer air does absorb more moisture. to cycle through into all of the dehumidifiers, but at the same time I needed it cool enough to protect the comb that we're prepping in here. I measured the actual moisture content in the honey the other night when I was about to extract, so now I also have these organized in order of the percentage. I went through the frames in each of them and did a test just to check and see where we were at. This top box was right at about 18%. It was the driest of the stuff that I haven't extracted yet. So that's the first one I'm gonna check, but I put it on top so that I can extract it tonight. And then the ones below were right at 19.25, so I'm about to check them as well. And we'll see how well this setup is working for me. So over the course of about a week, I ran several boxes through that drying room that I set up in the camper. Wasn't really sure how it would go. It's my first time to do this. And with those two dehumidifiers in there, you saw in the footage that it was already at 32%. But by the time it was done, when I'd given it a little bit more time to kind of process through, it actually got down to 24% humidity in the camper. And I managed to keep it there with those two dehumidifiers during the time that I had the honey in that space. You saw it wasn't massive in terms of the amount of room that I had in there, but in total at one time, I could have approximately 15 to 18 deep boxes in that space that I showed where I actually had the drying rack set up. And as I cycled the honey through, in the span of about 2 days that I would leave it in there with that setup going, I would come back, I'd check the actual frames, and each frame that I was pulling out, I was able to get down to about 16.8%. And at that point, it started to feel a little dry. You don't want it to be so hard that you have issues extracting it. So that would be about the driest that I would let it go. And then by the time I got everything bottled, ran it through the extractor and everything, I ended up settling right about 17% on most of the honey that I extracted. I do go through with a refractometer on pretty much every single box that I run. I pull a frame, typically from the outside, because my experience is that the outside frames tend to dry at a slower rate when they're on the hive with the bees. And so normally if those are dry, then the middle, you know, is going to be a little bit drier. So anyway, I'd go through, I'd check an outside frame, make sure the humidity level was, or the moisture level was where I wanted it. And then once I got the boxes down to about 16.8 to 17%, I'd run them through the extractor, get it bottled up. It is important to note that it's not just about managing the moisture level in the actual frames before extraction. Your actual room that you're extracting in has some bearing on it too. Because of honey being hygroscopic, it'll actually draw moisture out of the air. So it's not really just about the drying room itself, it's about the actual conditions of where you're actually extracting your honey. So I also tend to run another dehumidifier in the space where I'm doing the actual extracting, just to make sure that I keep the level in a tolerable range. Typically, if I'm extracting in a space roughly the equivalent of about a 3-car garage, I can run a dehumidifier that I have that suits up to a 4,500 square foot space. I can run it in there and manage to maintain moisture of about 42 to 45% while I'm extracting, which does also help dry down the honey a little bit while I'm actually running through the processing on it. So you saw here, like, this is my first time to do it. I'm glad my wife let me actually try this harebrained scheme, and it ended up working out fantastically for me. I got all the honey extracted, we got it bottled up, we're about to send it to sale. And once again, you can see here at my home yard, I've got a few hives out there in the distance that honestly I haven't actually extracted the honey from yet. And so that is on the radar for the next week. And so we're going to try the makeshift drying room one more time. If you've done anything outside the norm in terms of setting up a space to dry your honey, I'd love to hear what ideas you have. Just feel free to throw it in the comments down there. Thank you once again for watching our channel. And if you would, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, or notification bell icon, and continue to watch for more content.
Yeah.